If your frosting looks like this, watch this video to find out how to turn it into this. I'll show you the most common mistakes people make when they smooth buttercream, from how they use their tools to the technique they use. Here's a quick recap of how to get your cake ready for icing or frosting it, by attaching it to a cake board with some buttercream to act as glue, and then layering it with your filling. I have 2 really detailed tutorials on how to make a layer cake and how to crumb coat a cake, in case you want more details about this part. Once the cake is crumb coated and the crumb coat has set, we move on to the final layer of buttercream, and this is where the problems tend to start. The first frosting mistake is not spreading buttercream up to the edges of the cake, on the top, and also around the sides, which we'll get to in a minute. This will leave a gap in the top edge of the cake, which you'll see after we smooth the sides of the cake. On the sides, if the buttercream doesn't go right up to the top of the cake, you'll end up with gaps or shallow parts around the top, and the top edge will be uneven instead of straight. Let's fast forward to what this would look like if I stopped spreading the buttercream now and scrape around the cake with a cake comb or icing scraper or frosting smoother. I'll show you how to fix this in a moment, but first I want to highlight 3 problems with the way you use your cake comb or icing scraper or frosting smoother. After you've spread your buttercream all the way down to the bottom of the cake, to the cake board, ignoring the top of the cake for now because we'll fix that next, when you start smoothing it, these are the most common problems. These short, jerky spins of the turntable, and this trail or groove or line that goes all the way around the cake, imprinted into the buttercream, and the shallow patches you can still see down here at the bottom. Watch the straight edge of the cake comb and you'll notice that with these short spins on the turntable, every pause, as I reach to spin the turntable again, the edge of the cake comb digs into the frosting and you'll see vertical dents going up the frosting, spaced all around the cake. Instead, reach as far around the turntable as you can to spin it in a long, smooth spin, without any jerks, and that will allow your cake comb to glide around the cake without digging into it. Now let's talk about this line in the buttercream here. This is caused by something digging into the buttercream, something that sticks out from the straight edge of the cake comb. And that's what happens when you ding or dent the straight edge when you drop it or knock it. I can feel a sharp piece sticking out along the edge of my comb. And that's what's digging into the buttercream and dragging a trail behind it. If I switch to a different cake comb that hasn't been damaged, it will smooth the buttercream without leaving a trail or line behind it. I find that metal is a lot more resilient than plastic or acrylic for cake combs. Moving down to these shallow areas of the buttercream around the bottom of the cake, these happen wherever the buttercream wasn't spread on as thickly as on the rest of the cake. And they're really easy to fix when they're this shallow because you just scrape around the cake a few more times to take off a few layers of buttercream, and then those areas won't be shallower than the rest. I want to go back to this top edge here. To avoid these gaps around the top of the cake, spread more buttercream onto the cake and spread it out so that it goes over the sides of the cake. And around the sides of the cake, push upwards so that the buttercream sticks up to make this wall or lip around the top edge of the cake. It's a good idea to go around the cake a few times to push the buttercream up to make sure it's high enough, because if you scrape around too soon, you'll still have these areas at the top where the buttercream is shallower. So when you swipe sideways with an offset spatula or angled palette knife to level this top edge, the buttercream won't be smooth all the way up and the top edge won't be level. By spreading on more buttercream, it definitely looks better than this, but to get the buttercream really smooth, you need to spread further and scrape more. And what I mean by that is to spread the buttercream further up and to scrape several times until you've taken off all of the excess buttercream and there aren't any shallow patches left. But let's rewind to talk more about the technique you use to smooth buttercream. Press the base of your cake comb down on the cake board to line it up straight, and then use very, very light pressure as you spin the cake on the turntable, holding the comb still so it's the turntable that's moving and doing all of the work. You can see that the straight edge of my cake comb is only coming into contact with the buttercream that's sticking out the furthest from the cake, which is why you have to scrape so many times to take off all of this excess until all of the buttercream is the same thickness, so it's smooth. If you see any little air bubbles like this, that's where your pressure is too firm and tears the buttercream. And to avoid it, you can try harder to use lighter pressure, or to fix it, one of my favorite hacks is to warm up your cake comb. There are 3 ways I like to do this. You can use a blowtorch, running the flame up and down the straight edge that you're going to press against the cake. Or a hairdryer works well too, or you can hold your comb under hot water and then dry it off. What's really important with any of these methods is to pinch the comb and wait until it's warm, not hot. Otherwise you'll melt the buttercream and cause bulges or bubbles underneath the surface, and you can also change the color of the buttercream. Once the comb is barely warm, you'll feel it glide effortlessly over the buttercream, and it will fill in any air bubbles and leave a super smooth surface behind. The top edge is a common struggle because everyone wants those sharp edges from the sides over onto the top of the cake, and you can't get those if you didn't spread your buttercream far enough outwards on the top of the cake, or upwards on the sides of the cake, because there won't be enough buttercream there and you'll have gaps and shallow edges and an uneven top edge. Once the buttercream is high enough, the action you're looking for is a swipe, sideways, using an offset spatula or palette knife, or you can use your cake comb. But there are 3 really common frosting mistakes here. The first is to push down. You should only be pushing sideways with no pressure going down, since that will cause a bulge in the buttercream underneath. And the next mistake is to use a messy blade. Instead, wipe your tool after every swipe, so there's no buttercream left on it. Because after swiping, look how much buttercream is on my blade, and if I swipe again, I'm dragging these dregs of buttercream back onto the neat edge I've created, leaving this textured line along the edge. So make sure the blade is clean, and then you can swipe again. And finally, don't stop too soon. After you've swiped all the way around the cake, get down to eye level, and wherever you see the top edge go up, so it's not quite level, swipe again. These blips are usually in between where 2 swipes went before, so you'll see them in a few places around the cake, and it just takes a moment to swipe over them and wipe the blade clean again, and repeat until the top edge is level all the way around. I hope this has been helpful. To learn hundreds more cake decorating techniques and designs, visit my cake school on britishgirlbakes.com, where you'll find online courses and memberships. See you there!